they're making another movie.
On?
They're making another inaccurate movie on an accurate historical event.
शूट करते हैं फिर चलो
चलो.
Hello everyone and welcome to Tareekh. In today's episode we will be telling you about the two battles of Tarain. The first and the second battle that was fought between Muhammad Ghori and Prithviraj Chauhan. So let's start with a depiction of the aggressor, Muhammad Ghori कौन थे? Now Muhammad Ghori came from the Ghurid Empire, which reached its zenith under the combined rule of two brothers, Ghiyasuddin Muhammad and Muhammad Ghori. Now while Ghiyasuddin's focus was towards expanding their empire towards the west, Muhammad Ghori, who was stationed in Ghazni, he sought to expand his empire towards the east, which meant towards India. इनके फोर्सेस में मेनली टर्किक एंड तजिक स्लेव्स थे who comprised of a substantial portion of his army, but they also had other racial groups who were employed as horsemen and other posts. But Ghori's descent into India and his subsequent battles with Prithviraj was not something that happened overnight, or it was not something that was sudden. The foundation was laid over decades. Muhammad Ghori felt a threat from the Ismailis, and so to disperse of that, he captured Multan in 1175 and subsequently he also seized Ouch in 1178. Later he invaded Patan, which was the capital of the Waghela Raja of Gujarat. And the battle was fought near Mount Abu, but the Raja's army was better prepared, better equipped, and they won the battle that day. And this made Ghori also realize that if he wanted to enter India, coming via Multan was not as smart as it would be maybe from the route of Punjab. And so he set course there. So in 1179 he seized Peshawar, and 2 years later he invaded Lahore. The Ghaznavid ruler who was placed there, Khusrau Malik, bartered for peace. But again after 3 years, Ghori came, invaded Lahore and captured the fort at Sialkot. Khusrau Malik, although defeated, he made an alliance with the Khokhars, who were a local Hindu tribe from the Salt Range, and retaliated, but they were unable to capture the fort of Sialkot back. Ghori invaded Lahore in 1186 for the third time. This time Khusrau Malik was captured and sent to Balarwan, to the fort of Gurjistan, where he was killed by 1192. Multan, Lahore and Sindh had become an integral part of the Ghurid Empire, and after consolidating his conquests, Muhammad Ghori then shifted his attention towards Bhatinda, which he seized in 1189. For Ghori, the occupation of the fort at Bhatinda was a very strategic move. Bhatinda was occupied and placed under Malik Ziauddin Tulaki, who was also given 12,000 horsemen to occupy and maintain the fort. This charge was given to him for 8 months. It was then that Rai Pathoda, which was an epithet for Prithviraj Chauhan, that he realized that the shortcomings in allowing Ghori to consolidate these strategic spaces within the subcontinent, and so he gathered an army and he marched towards Bhatinda with the aim to dislodge the Ghurid power over there. Prithviraj Chauhan ruled over not the entire subcontinent, but few places like a part of Delhi, Ajmer, Haryana, part of Punjab, Rajasthan, and apparently he would not sit in Delhi, he would sit in Ajmer, and the Tomar king Govind Rai, he was stationed at Delhi, he was made to sit there. Ghori, who was not present in the Indian subcontinent at that time, he marched towards Delhi to meet Prithviraj Chauhan because he was actually not really prepared कि अब conflict would take place. उन्हें नहीं पता था कि
एक लड़ाई होने वाली है, and his army was also not that prepared. But on the other hand, Prithviraj Chauhan was well prepared. Not only he came to the battlefield, but major Rais and Ranas who were present in the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, they too joined him in the Battle of Tareikh, which was fought on 1191 CE. Battlefield के ऊपर राजपूतों ने they had completely destroyed मोहम्मद घोरी's left and right wing. कहते हैं जो मोहम्मद घोरी के बहुत ही क्लोज आमिर्स थे who were taken care of since they were children or since they were young, they all fled the battlefield. Khalji amirs who were known to be courageous, they were also not able to tackle the situation. On the battlefield, Sultan Muhammad Ghori, he went towards the elephant on which Govind Rai, who was the Tomar ruler of Delhi, was sitting. And he attacked him, and apparently he broke his teeth. And जो गोविंद राय थे उन्होंने अपने javelin थोड़ा फेंका towards Muhammad Ghori, and that had injured his arm, and he toppled down his horse because of the impact. One of the Khalji Amir or soldier, he saw this and he came running on a horse, and he picked him up, picked up Ghori from the battlefield, and he took him away. In a way, he saved his life. Elephants were a very important factor when it comes to the winning of the Rajputs during the first battle of Tarai. Soon, because all the soldiers had fled and he too, Ghori too was injured and he too was taken away from the battlefield, he reached Bhatinda. Bhatinda too fell out of the Ghorid Empire because Prithviraj Chauhan, he took it away from him. After Ghori's defeat, they all fled towards Bhatinda. Now Bhatinda also, kind of it was taken away from the hold of the Ghorid Empire because Prithviraj Chauhan, he reached there and he captured it again. After this, Muhammad Ghori, he spent almost 13 months in preparing so that he could strike back again. According to Farishta, Muhammad Ghori, he went to Ghor first to meet his brother. There he had punished his Ghurid, his Khalji and his Khorasani soldiers and amirs. He didn't say much to the Afghan amirs because I think he was very lenient towards them. But all of these sects were punished. Apparently, a wallet full of grains were attached to the neck, and they were paraded in the city. They were asked if they did not, and if they refused to eat the grains, their heads were chopped off. After meeting his brother Muhammad Ghori, he went to Ghazni. There he did not speak to anybody. He did not speak to his wife. He did not speak to anybody. He had put a lot of his efforts in preparing for the second battle. Apparently, he trained his horses to fight elephants. So there you don't have elephants in Ghazni or in Afghanistan. Elephant dummies were made so that he could train them, and so that it will be beneficial for him when he's going to fight with the Rajputs again.
So after a year of preparations, all of a sudden Muhammad Ghori embarks on his way to Hindustan. When he reaches Peshawar, an old officer under his power approaches him, asks him of what he intends to do and what his plans are, and he lets this officer know that following what had happened during the battle of Tarain, he had not really forgiven the Ghurids, the Khaljis and the Khorasani amirs, and he was on his way to Hindustan, but वो भगवान भरोसे आए थे, वो किसी का support लेके नहीं आ रहे थे. Hearing this, the noble at Peshawar, pleaded with Ghori. He apologized on behalf of the nobles, and seeing that this noble had been loyal to him and his name all these years, he forgave him and also took whoever was now willing to come with him to Hindustan. Sindh के border में ही there were nearly 40 Turkish horsemen. According to Isami, they were very strong and warlike, and they joined the army of Muhammad Ghori. According to the Tajul Masir, Muhammad Ghori sent a letter from Lahore to Rai Pithoda or Prithviraj Chauhan demanding his submission. But Prithviraj Chauhan sent a very rude and harsh reply, and also sent notice to all neighboring Rais for their support. At this time, we are informed by Minhaj, who quotes a trustworthy source as having stated that the army of Muhammad Ghori at this time comprised of 120,000 soldiers. This army was well equipped, and further they were led by 4 veteran warriors of the Ghaznavid Empire. They were Kharbak, Kharmil, Ilba and Mukalba. They were dexterous, they were well seasoned, and they were very ferocious in battle. Apart from them, the army was also led by generals like Tajuddin, Kubacha, Yalduz and Kutubuddin Aibak. TLDR, Muhammad Ghori started from Ghazni to India in 1191. By 1191-92, he reached Tarain, where he had faced a shameful loss, and he pitched his tent at the same spot. He was met by around 150 Rajput Rais along with Prithviraj Chauhan, who came with the aim to either finish them off or to die trying. But see, what had happened in this year was that Muhammad Ghori took the time to study tactics, to better his army, to better his formations and his planning. And this time what he did was that he divided his army into 2 sections. A majority or a portion of the army with the banners and the elephants he had stationed subsequently behind the area where the war or the battle was to take place. When a flank, and they were supposed to act as a backup to the main army should they face that requirement in their fight with the Rajput Rais. Now, leaving a chunk of his army behind, the rest of the army moved forward in a very leisurely manner. Having divided his army into 4 parts, he also divided 10,000 mounted archers into 4 parts to attack the army again from all 4 sides.
According to Isami, the disposition of the army is very interesting. Govind Rai, who was the ruler of Delhi, was the Muqaddam of the Rajput forces. He fought in advance of Pithora's army. Pithora or Prithviraj Chauhan fought in the center. The left wing of Prithviraj's army was under Bhola, who was the Wazir. The right wing was led by Badamsa Raval. The disposition of Ghori's army was as follows. Ghori himself led the center. Kharbak was the leader of the Muqaddam or advance guard. The right wing was controlled by Ilah, while Makalba led the left wing of the army. Kharmil was at the back of the center. Kutubuddin Aibak looked after the general disposition of the forces and kept close to Ghori. According to Isami, Ghori's army were around 130,000 horsemen, and they were protected with steel armors and coats. Govind Rai dashed ahead with his elephants and army to attack Kharbak. Kharbak, he protected himself by putting the sheet around him, and he asked his archers to attack the elephant drivers. As soon as 3 to 4 elephant drivers were attacked, the whole line of elephants were disturbed, and this created chaos. When the elephant line gave way, Kharbak, he intensified his pressure, and after looking at this particular situation, Ghori, he thought this is the right time to strike. He was in the center, and he brought with him his left wing and the right wing to intensify his attack, and they moved further. This created chaos because already the position of the enemy party was in disorder, and because of the intensified force or pressure of Ghori's army, many of the Rajput soldiers and officers, they fled. Ghori's tactics, they were really brilliant, and this caused Prithviraj Chauhan's defeat. He got down off his elephant and he mounted his horse to uh, flee the whole situation in the battlefield, but apparently he was captured at Saraswati. According to Minhaj, he was immediately executed. But according to Hassan Nizami, he was taken to Ajmer and he was allowed to function for some time. But later on, he was executed because of treason. The fact that Prithviraj Chauhan was allowed to rule has been supported by a semi-contemporary Sanskrit text, Virudh Vidhi Vidvamsa, which states that he was a vassal king under Ghori. Also, there were coins issued during that time. There were Prithviraj Chauhan's coin, and on the obverse side, a superscription is written where it's written Shri Muhammad Sams. So this states, and this actually supports the fact that he did rule under Ghori for some time. After his death, his son was made the ruler, the vassal king of Ajmer. Govind Rai of Delhi, he was killed at the battlefield, but his son was made, or his successor was made the ruler of Delhi, and he accepted the suzerainty of Ghori. Many of the Rais, Mukaddams and Ranas, they too submitted to Muhammad Ghori. Only if they agreed to pay Malguzari and Marisimi Khidmat, which was like the act of submission, and then also a military camp or a military station was established in Indraprasth. This second battle of Tarai was a watershed in Indian history. With this, the Turkish rule began in the Indian subcontinent.
Now we discuss why the tale of Prithviraj Chauhan and his battle against Ghori is dramatized and eulogized till this day, and how that is possible. Largely, this is because his life and his subsequent battles were made into a poem which is an epic poem by the name of Prithviraj Raso. And it is a very detailed description about his life, his marriage with the Princess Sanjukta. There is another incident where he kills one of his ministers, and then the battle. This work is allegedly authored by Chand Bardai, who was a poet come political advisor in the court of Prithviraj Chauhan. And this work has been translated to English by James Todd, who was a British officer and an Oriental scholar with the English East India Company. The epic is a beautiful work of literature. It is written in Pingal, which is an Eastern Rajasthani variant of Braj Bhasha. So already there is a lot of culture associated with this poem, and because it's about a ruler who had to take up power at the age of 11 when his father died, and he had to consolidate, and in the epic he sees his first taste of battle is against his cousin, where he has to safeguard his position as the ruler, because the death of his father created a division in the ruling class, and so he had to, at the tender age of 11, let's say maybe 12, he had to see that, he had to fight against that. And then the epic also tells about his romance with the Princess Sanjukta, how he, जब Princess Sanjukta का स्वयंवर हो रहा था, he attacked and he stole her away from there because Sanjukta's father did not support their love affair. And then after that, it talks about the battle between Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Ghori. And Muhammad Ghori was an invader. There are no two ways about it. And that is how he is presented. And there's this righteousness that is associated with Prithviraj Chauhan, and that comes through in the poem. The Prithviraj Raso blames Prithviraj for losing the second battle of Tarain, because he states that after the first battle and at the age of 25, maybe 26, Prithviraj was more focused on his relationship and on his love affair with his wife Sanjukta, and he did not pay proper attention to state affairs and to the news of Ghori slowly gaining power and heading towards India.
एक सेकेंड, तो पृथ्वीराज was only 26 years old.
Yeah.
अक्षय कुमार की एज कितनी है?
Isn't he like 50?
50 plus.
But all things aside, the Raso questioning Prithviraj Chauhan and his inability to counter Ghori a second time is the most critical part of this entire poem.
Yeah.
What this poem does brilliantly, and this we have seen in the case of Malik Muhammad Jayasi's Padmavat, it combines fact with fiction and it presents it in a beautiful prose. So you make fiction part of your factual narrative, and things that did not happen, you believe them because a part of the story tells you things that did happen.
Yeah. And also we have to keep in mind that these stories were always written 300 to 400 years after the actual incident had taken place.
Yeah.
So you have to be very critical when you're reading these facts come fictional prose and poems.
Unfortunately or fortunately, because that in part also led to the Raso reaching its popularity, what helped it in reaching that stature was that because it spoke about the heroic nature of Prithviraj Chauhan, his
Revenge.
valor, the thirst for revenge. A lot of Rajput rulers also commissioned multiple copies of it. However, even though the work is so popular and so cherished, there are many glaring loopholes in the story. Not just regarding Prithviraj Chauhan, his ancestry, his exploits, but the most glaring loophole is in connection with his battle against Ghori. Now, following the second battle of Tarain, what the Raso claims happened is that after the defeat, Prithviraj is captured and taken to Afghanistan, where he is blinded and imprisoned. When his political advisor, Chand Barai, hears of this, he somehow makes his way into the court of Muhammad Ghori and he convinces the Sultan to let Prithviraj Chauhan do a demonstration of shooting arrows. And somehow Muhammad Ghori also agrees to see a performance by Prithviraj Chauhan. And so, because he's blind, Chand Barai in a very clever prose conveys to Prithviraj Chauhan where Ghori is sitting from him.
चार बांस 24 गज अंगुल अष्टा प्रमाण ता ऊपर सुल्तान है चूके मत चौहान.
And when Prithviraj Chauhan hears this, he aims at the Sultan, effectively killing him. Although he is also killed, Chand Barai is also killed because but according to the Raso, even though he died, at least he could reclaim his honor, if not his kingdom.
बट बात यहाँ ये आती है कि मोहम्मद गोरी डिड नॉट डाई लाइक दिस. अकॉर्डिंग टू वेरियस कंटेम्प्रेरी सोर्सेज, Ghori had launched his last campaign in the Indian subcontinent. He had gone to a place called Andkhud where he fought a war there, but he was defeated. After his defeat, chaos took place in the empire where a lot of armies and a lot of commanders wanted to rebel against him. So Ghori, after seeing the chaos, he marched from Ghazni and he kind of subdued the rebellion in Lahore, especially Khokars had risen against him. And after subduing it, he went to Delhi, he met Aibak Qutbuddin Aibak and then moved around, and then he left Delhi and he wanted to go back to Ghazni. So on his way, there was this place called Damyak on the bank of Indus. He wanted to rest there. It was a nice cool place with green lush garden grass and lush area, so a camp was set there, and in the evening he sat and he wanted to pray. At that point of time he was attacked, he was assassinated, so he passed away on 15th March 1206 CE. He was assassinated, yes, but not by Prithviraj Chauhan, but by an assassin who could be a Khokar or an Ismaili. And we have already told you how Prithviraj Chauhan also passed away. So the contemporary sources, various contemporary sources, they actually in a way they debunk such claims that has has risen because of these poems.
In fact, the Prithviraj Raso is not a contemporary record like we have already stated. There are more contemporary records that were written during the time of Prithviraj and closer to his time, and they have more credible information regarding his life and rule, and nowhere is it stated, nowhere are the events stated like the way that they have been presented in the Raso.
According to Akshay Kumar, who is portraying the role of Prithviraj Chauhan in the upcoming film Prithviraj, he in one of his press conferences states that Prithviraj Chauhan is the ruler of entire subcontinent. Okay, yes, now that we are a country, but in that point of time, he ruled just few parts of the northern part of the Indian subcontinent, part of Delhi, Ajmer, Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab. He did not rule the southern part of the subcontinent, neither the west nor the east. So he is not the ruler of the entire subcontinent. And there was no concept of India at that time. There were different principalities and kingdoms who were nations in themselves.
And they kept fighting with each other at the drop of a hat.
Now we are moving on to the next segment called Tareekh Do's and Don'ts. Whenever there is a Bollywood film made on a particular ruler or an incident that has taken place in history, do not trust them completely, because fiction is always added to it, exaggeration is always going to be shown to the audience.
What you should do is enjoy the movie but not associate a lot of credibility to it. Just have a good time, but don't take it seriously.
Yeah. Don't create chaos after watching a film, and do not attack a community on the basis of that.
What you can do is spread harmony, love, affection, and just gather around and have fun regardless of who you are, what you may be.
Another thing is that please look at credible sources and books written by eminent historians who are famous all over the world if you want to look up at a particular incident or a part of history.
Do not trust WhatsApp forwards, shady posts, and things that are written just with the purpose of creating chaos.
Stop worshipping rulers who have ruled us. They are part of history. They were rulers who were ruling their principalities, their empires. They were protecting their people, and that's it. Do not worship them, or do not worship people portraying them.
What you can do is look at all these characters through a critical lens. Observe what they did, what they did not do, and the reasons behind those events.
Invasions and conquering neighboring states was a very common factor in history, and especially medieval times. Prithviraj Chauhan was no saint. He too conquered areas around him. For example, he invaded Mahoba, and he went on war with one of the very two famous Bundelkhandi generals, Allaha and Udal, who were serving Chandela king called Parmar. So wars happened, and it was a very common factor. Not only Muslim rulers, they attacked Hindus, but Hindus also attacked Hindu kingdoms. It was very, very normal at that time.
It was a way of life. You couldn't
Yeah.
really escape violence
Yeah.
in the medieval age, not just in the Indian subcontinent, but all over the world.
So stop putting religious association to all these, invasions or wars that took place in time, because they did not do that. And we are in modern times doing this to just create chaos for the heck of it. That's all for today. I hope that you have liked today's episode. Please like, share and subscribe, and keep watching Tareekh.
Bye.